Hey guys, welcome to today's show. We're talking about social media, and this post was inspired by my recent time away from social media, and just wanted to really share my thoughts on what I learned during my time away from social media and kind of how I plan to use it moving forward. And I think it's important every once in a while to put these things into perspective, especially something like social media, which can be such a powerful tool when used correctly. However, it's also highly addicting and it does create some boundary issues as well. And most people don't have clear boundaries when it comes to social media usage. And this creates all sorts of problems associated with high usage, things like feeling distracted, feeling anxious, getting caught in comparison traps, all things that I want to talk about here in today's show. And I recently took a little over a month off of being on social media. My wife and I decided to just do this for reasons for the time we were spending on it and how we wanted our lives and our future to look and where social media plays a role in that. It started to creep in more than we would like to, especially as small business owners. It's very challenging to balance between being on it and using it for business purposes, but to uh, not get caught in the rat race that social media can put us down either. And this is something, the time away from it is something I've done several times before. And every single time I do, I always learn something new from it. So listen up to today's show to learn my takeaways from my time away from social media and how I'm going to try and use it moving forward. So the dangers of social media are real, whether we realize them or not. I'm not I'm not anti-social media, and I don't want this to be a knock on social media softwares, but there are real dangers associated with it. And I got inspired by this from several places, but most recently from Cal Newport's book Deep Work. Great book, highly recommended. But he talks a lot about social media usage and the dangers that it has. And he actually wrote another book that I haven't read yet, but is on my list, and called Digital Minimalism. But both these really put social media in perspective. And I've heard different people talk on this, and I'm not going to throw numbers at you because I don't have them off the top of my head, but it is becoming more and more a problem of the amount of hours people are spending on social media or similar things throughout the day, and the effect this is having on psychological health and psychological conditions and things, especially for, I feel for the young, teenagers and adolescents growing up, that I'm thankful I didn't have this around in high school, because I can only imagine the amount of comparison and the amount of problems that it is bringing. And I think to a smaller degree, that's happening the same way in adults that are finding themselves in that same thing. There's a lot of validation that comes around with it. There's a lot of how many likes do I get? There's a lot of highly stimulating things that the social media apps have been designed to help us to stay on the app for longer. They are they are companies that use advertising and they want us on their software for longer. And the more we're using their software, the better they are. They are still businesses as much as they are businesses that can help us connect. We do have to be aware that they do have some motives that might be different than what our motives are. And I know how tough it is to find clear boundaries. Like I mentioned earlier, this is something that I might not even be on at all if it weren't for business purposes and having to market and make our services known and get our word out there for what we do. But that can make it hard to find clear boundaries, and knowing what's personal usage versus business usage for it, and knowing how much time to spend on it. Those are things that all tend to blur together, for myself at least, and I'm sure for many others. And from my personal experience, there have been past times I've done it. I don't know how many times at this point, maybe, a handful of times I've taken about a month or so away from it. And this most recent time was uh, pretty much through the month of July and in early August here in 2020, that decided to take a step back from it, just to reevaluate really where it fits in my life, and where I want it to fit in moving forward. And here were some of my takeaways from this recent time away from social media and what I learned from it. So first thing, once I got over FOMO, once I got over the fear of missing out, it really wasn't that hard. It was a few days. Usually there's a few days at the start where you find yourself itching to get back on there, and you feel like you're missing something because if you don't check it every day or even every week, then you're going to miss out all the stuff that's out there. And it's really just not true. Yeah, I quickly got over that, and it's really not as hard as you think. Although when we talk addictions with stuff like this, it's real. You find yourself, if you have it and saved in a certain folder on your phone that you can scroll and click on, you'll find yourself, because I deleted off my phone altogether, but you'll find yourself still following that same pattern on your phone to go click on it, and you're like, wow, this must be addicting, that I'm still find myself anytime there's a dull moment that I find myself reaching for that. Second piece, I found a lot less anxiety in comparison. And this is maybe the most important thing out of all of them, but the anxiety things that I struggled with, of feeling like you need to be doing more, need to be um, trying this or trying that, that becomes very exaggerated when you're on social media and you see other people, especially following other people in the same profession, following people that are chasing the same goals. There's a lot of comparison that can creep in, even if you're consciously aware of it. There's things that you see and it's like, oh, well, they're doing this, or they're traveling here, or their family is growing this way, or they're, doing this in their work. And there's so many opportunities for us to get caught in that. And that is a very dangerous place to be, whether it's happening consciously or subconsciously, because social media does not tell the whole story. It's a snapshot. Anything you see of our lives on there, I want you to know that it's not how our lives always are. That's our lives are very real and have the same struggles just like everyone else's. Those things just don't get put on social media. And I think even more so because we try not to spend a lot of time on our phones, that those things can get hidden or brushed under as not important. But I'm here to tell you those things are very real. The anxiety is real. The comparison's real. And being away from it, I noticed less of that. Not to say that everything's gone without it, but definitely felt more at peace and in a better state mentally being away from it. So I found that I spent more quality time doing other things that were important to me. Things like time with Lindsay, things like time with hanging or talking with friends, listening to podcasts, reading books. I don't keep track exactly how many books I read in a year or anything, but over that month, I went through at least 3 I can think of, and maybe was wrapping up another one where a lot of the time that I spent on social media got transferred into reading and learning on things that I've been wanting to learn on. And there's lots of other things you can fill this with. It can be working out. It can be getting out in nature. It can be all sorts of things that you can use that time that adds up to harness it into more quality things. And I noticed this on a big scale with things like having more time to do things like reading, spending quality time with people that I love. But this also happens in the mundane, the day-to-day moments of you're waiting in line somewhere, or you have some time where you have some time to kill, and it's okay to just be bored. It's okay to think. My mental clarity felt better. I wasn't filling any idle moment in my thinking, or when I didn't have anything to do, with mindlessly scrolling through a social media device. Next point was that no one really missed me that much. This was one of the big fears that, as a business and as a business on social media, there's very much a pressure that, well, this is something you have to do. You have to be regularly relevant, and it's like people are just sitting on their phone waiting for you to post something, and that's just not the case. Not to say that people don't get value from it. I hope people find value in what we put out there, but at the same time, I could guess that very few people actually noticed that we were off social media. And that just shows that there's so much other stuff on there. There's so much other stuff that goes into it, and people are not waiting around for your posts. And it's okay that no one really misses you. I think that's a good thing. And when it comes to social media, yes, if you stopped texting or calling people or being around certain places, that's the areas that you want to be missed in, not on your social media presence. Along with that, I didn't really miss that much. That whole FOMO piece of missing out on something, no one really missed me. And I thought maybe I'd come back to a lot of things that I'd have to catch up on or get acquainted with. And it didn't take long to get caught up on the things that mattered. And apologies for anyone listening if I wasn't engaging with your stuff. I'm sorry, but just wasn't on media and you might not have even noticed that we weren't there. But I found that I didn't miss much either. I didn't feel like I was out of the loop on anything that I thought maybe I would have been heading into it. Last point is that the world is still spinning. The world's still moving. Being off social media, although it seems daunting if it's something that you find yourself addicted or drawn to, the world is still spinning, and it is okay that you can be off it. There's nothing that you can't go back to or catch up on down the road if you wanted to. So those are some of the big takeaways, but I wanted to kind of wrap this up too with how I plan to use it moving forward, because that's what I learned, but I want to use what I learned to apply it moving forward. Because like I said, I'm not anti-social media. I do think it has its problems, but I think it has its upside too uh, for connecting with others, for being able to form relationships. There's a lot of friends that I've actually made over social media, and acquaintances and people that I've been able to grow into friends through social media interactions. So I do think there's value in it. I just, based on what I learn every time I get away from it, I am really working to find a way of how that looks, of how it looks to have it, but not let it be consuming. And here's some of the things that I came up with. First one being setting very clear boundaries with usage. Very much want to not make it an open invite for being on social media. And that goes back to anytime I have a dull moment or anytime I'm thinking about it, or like, oh, I forgot to check this or have to reach out to that person. I want to have very clear boundaries for days and times that I am checking it. So making sure that it's something that I can use to connect with people, but it doesn't have to be an ongoing text message thread that continuing to get roped into. I don't want social media to dictate what I'm doing. I want to make sure that I'm dictating when I'm using it and how I'm using it. And that comes with clear boundaries. And if that's addicting to you, there are actual app blockers that keep you from using it. If it's something that you feel like willpower is an issue, there are actual ways to implement some of those things even more effectively. Second point is I want to be honest with myself and where social media fits. It's easy to think that either social media plays a bigger role, or like I said earlier, that I play a bigger role on social media. I want to be really honest about where it fits currently in my life and where I want social media to fit moving forward. And I don't want to be a family that's always walking around with selfie stories. I don't want to be living that lifestyle. And I need to be honest with where social media fits, how it fits. And just because it's seen used in other ways where some people are successful and seemingly happy and doing those things where they are living a certain social media lifestyle, that's not where I want it to fit in my life personally. And I want to continue to be honest with where it fits and be able to say, hey, if this is no longer serving me and us in our lives, then it's something that has to go, just like anything. And I think that's a evaluation that has to happen with whatever we're using, but making sure that's not just a one-time self conversation of, okay, social media is either I'm using it or I'm not. And I want it to be something that's continuing to be evaluated to make sure that it's fitting in our lives the way that we want it to. Next point is using it as it's supposedly designed to be used. And I have recently I've eliminated any kind of scrolling on there. I'm not using the feed as a way to just spend a lot of time scrolling. I'm more purposefully interacting, responding to messages, connecting with people more so than trying to just scroll and scroll and scroll. And that's hard to do, but I think using it as a connecting device, as a tool to form relationships, is how I want to be using it. And that can be complicated of how to best do that, but something that I want to purposefully try and work towards moving forward. I want to be more cold-hearted with the use of it. And what I mean by that is just not to see social media as bigger than it is. It's easy to get excited about being on Instagram when you've been away from it for a long time, or see the notifications pop up that you have a lot of likes on something. And I think those things are where a lot of the problems are created. So being more cold-hearted with just using it as a tool, not using it to try and gain validation. I don't find my worth in how many followers I have, or who's engaged with my content, or who unfollows me or likes my stuff or doesn't like it. That's stuff that maybe early on was more important to me, but the more I do things like this, the more cold-hearted I become with the use of it. And I hope I'm not becoming cold-hearted, but when it comes to use of the app, not putting Instagram or social media or anything on a pedestal. Lastly, I want to know where it fits. And I'm still, to be completely honest with you guys, I'm still not sure how much I really want it in my life. And I see the benefits of it, but I see the negative side effects. And I'm at this point where I'm at a crossroads where I want to use it, but there's negative side effects that are real too, that take me away from things that I want to be doing or things I want to be thinking. And it's plainly put, it's tough, and I'm having a hard time with it. I do think it belongs to some way to be able to connect with others for our business. I think it's important, but I'm really currently working on how that exactly fits and how that's going to look in terms of amount of usage and how it's used and using it more purposefully. So for those that have followed me for a long time, it might look a little different. I don't want to be inactive on there, but I also am letting you guys know my goal is not to be on my phone, especially on Instagram or social media at all times. So it will look different going forward. Still trying to figure out how that looks though in my life and with our family goals, our business goals, and all those things. So I hope that was helpful. I've always learned a lot from these things. I highly recommend, if you guys haven't, to try some kind of detox, some kind of time away, just to gain some perspective, and make sure you're not just filling it with other things that are equivalent to social media though. Don't fill it with other equal distractions. Make sure that if you're taking it out, you're replacing it with things that are filling, uplifting, encouraging, and things that you want to be doing. So remember, if it's not managed appropriately, social media can rob you of being more productive. It can rob you of spending your time doing what truly matters with the people that truly matters, and just being happier and less anxious and more at peace. And instead of letting social media dictate how you spend your time, make sure you're the one in charge of how you're using it and when you're using it. That's really all I got for you guys today. Thanks for listening in, and have a great weekend.